Hey church family, Hope and Mitch here, coming from our house. Yeah, it's good to
Kind of see you.
see you. Yeah, worship together. We have the privilege of continuing our character study in our lordship class. We know right now it's a little bit weird. We know we're distant from each other because of the coronavirus. We're praying for you. We hope that you guys are doing well, and we can reach out, we can talk, we can video chat if you guys need to. So just let's please continue to strive to be together, even though we can't necessarily physically be together. So I know you guys have heard by now the public health from Chris. So I just, again, as it updates, we'll do our best to keep the church in the loop with what's happening. In the meantime, let's keep praying. Which brings us to tonight. We are going to be studying Hezekiah because, man, his example as a king of Israel, his example of what he does in the story we're going to read tonight is a great, great way for us to learn about what we should do in times like he was in. So.
Absolutely. So we'll start off with some fun facts about Hezekiah. One is his name. And by the way, we have our notes. So as you see us flipping, color-coded notes. Hezekiah's name actually means the Lord is strong. We're like, how timely is it that the person that we're sharing about is, his name literally means the Lord's strength. Especially in a time where our nation and our church and just individually and even us, like, we need God to strengthen us. It can't be media or even just word of mouth. Sometimes it's like, okay, God, can you be that for us? So we were pretty amazed that that's what his name means. Other translations say Yahweh is my strength. As far as kings of Israel, as far as what we studied, Jewish commentaries, Hezekiah is regarded as an example of someone who met the standard of a God-fearing king. Like all the laws of Moses, he was like a great example of like fulfilling those as a king. To the point that in 2 Kings 23:25, they say no king like him before or even after, who turned back to God with all his heart, soul, and might, in full accord with the teachings of Moses, was how they described him. And you can keep reading about him, but we were just like, wow, we hear that phrase a lot, like love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the verse that kind of comes from, or one of them, is Deuteronomy 6:5. And so in the commentaries it says that verse is actually a direct correlation to this verse in 2 Kings 23 about Hezekiah. It's like, what a cool thing to be known for.
What a guy to learn from too, right? I mean, someone who actually was a king over God's people and lived up to as best as he could what the standard of Moses was.
He didn't live a perfect life. It wasn't like he never failed, but that's how the Israelites regarded him. To the point that the author of 2 Kings gives him 3 chapters. For any of you guys who studied 1st and 2nd Kings, there's a lot of times where they give like a paragraph to be like, and they didn't do what God asked, or they really did do what God asked, and they don't always go into full out details, but they have 3 full chapters of the events that happened during his kingdom and his reign. So we just thought that was pretty significant that the writer would choose to hide him.
Chapters.
So choose to regard him so highly. They also believe that it's highly likely that his faith is actually accredited to why Jerusalem was saved from the Assyrians. So it's pretty amazing to think that his faith is accredited to them being saved.
It says a lot, especially because they're about to be, as you know, or maybe don't know, they were being attacked by a character we're about to look at in a second. And his faithfulness to God made a difference. And I think that's pretty powerful.
No, we can learn from that.
So we want to look at 2 Kings chapter 18. If you get the chance, go ahead and flip your Bible there. We're going to be reading from verses 19 through 37. And Hope's going to read here in a second. Well, I just want to share a little bit. When it comes to circumstances or being distressed or being in a moment in our life that's difficult where we don't necessarily see a way out or we're not sure what's going to happen, kind of like now with the coronavirus, right? It's a little weird, it's a little unnerving, it's affecting us in different ways, maybe some family members, maybe jobs, right? Maybe
bills.
Yeah. I mean, even for us the other day, we found out that campus is going to be shut down for the rest of the spring semester, which is kind of like, whoa, it's just a little bit weird, So anyway, my tendency when I'm in the middle of things like that is to just act. You've heard me say this before plenty of times. I tend to act and I tend to respond, but I don't go to God necessarily. That's not my first instinct, is to give these things to God. My first instinct is to go do something about it. And I've also seen that sometimes my instinct is to run to people, to talk to people and get advice from people rather than sit and be with God in God's presence. As we'll see a little bit later about Hezekiah, what he chooses to do. But I noticed that when I run to God, when I do make it, or when I actually do go pray, it takes a lot of my effort. It takes a lot of effort for me to really get deep into my heart and to get what's in my heart out to God. Maybe you can relate to that, but my tendency is to think that I can deal with things on my own, and as a result, I end up going and trying to deal with things. That's kind of my side of this coin. Hope's gonna share hers.
Yeah, and I definitely can relate to wanting to go to people for advice first, rather than going to God, or just even like, God, I don't know if I want to give you all of my emotions. I gave them all to you yesterday. I don't know if I could do it again. So I could totally relate to that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think my major tendency is that just when life starts to get, like, there's so many things going on or so many uncertainties, I think I tend to get overwhelmed in my thoughts. So it's more of like a mental battle for me. Sometimes it's like as soon as I wake up in the morning, I'm like, dude, Satan, leave me alone. I just woke up. And I have like 50 thoughts coming to my mind about all the things that need to get done, or all the different conversations that people are having about different circumstances that are going on. Or sometimes it can come through, like, I want to make the best choice about something and I have so many things to consider. There's a lot of information coming my way. So trying to process all of that kind of gets stuck internally. Or another tendency for me is just to have a hard time sorting through, like, what's true versus what I feel or what people are telling me. So for example, I think that sometimes I'll have these overwhelming thoughts and they sound really convincing, but maybe they're not necessarily biblical truths. Maybe it's more of whispers from the world or lies from Satan, but I'm like, because it's all in my mind, I have a hard time sifting through which one is actually true, if that makes sense. And so I tend to in that regard, I wind up worrying subconsciously or being anxious, and sometimes I don't even really know that I am until, like, maybe I start journaling to God about what I'm worried about or what I'm stressed about, and then I'm like, oh, that was in there? I didn't even know that was bothering me. But so I think it sometimes kind of comes out this way and feeling paralyzed or feeling heavy or just overwhelmed, but not always knowing how to put, like, a pin to it.
Yeah, so my tendency in this, in the middle of a crisis or in the middle of whatever situation is preoccupying my mind, my tendency is to act, and Hope's tendency is to be paralyzed. So it's kind of neat that we're on opposite ends of the spectrum, because we know, okay, this isn't what the biblical expectation is. And it gives us the room to study Hezekiah and really learn what the middle ground is. So I think, so we're going to read this section just to paint the picture of what he was going through. It's a character named Sennacherib. He is the Syrian king at this time. And just listen to his words and the way he's talking to Hezekiah. And imagine this being you. And we'll talk more in just a second.
So we'll start in verse 19. It says in 2 Kings 18, verse 19, "Then the royal spokesman said to them, 'Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. What are you relying on? You think mere words are strategy and strength for war? Who are you now relying on so that you have rebelled against me? Now look, you're relying on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff that will pierce the hand of anyone who grabs it and leans on it. That is what Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is to all who rely on him. Suppose you say to me, we rely on the Lord as our God. Isn't he the one whose high places and altar Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship at this altar in Jerusalem? So now, make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria. I'll give you 2,000 horses if you're able to supply riders for them. How then can you drive back a single officer and among the least of my master's servants? How can you rely on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Now I have attacked this place to destroy it without the Lord's approval. And the Lord said this to me, attack this land and destroy it.
So, one of the things that's good to know here is Egypt was one of Israel's allies at this time, right? And the king of Assyria and his spokesman are taunting like Jerusalem and Hezekiah, saying, look, even if you rely on them, they're not reliable. Even if you say the Lord will destroy us, that won't happen. He's just very, very vocal and very loud.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even like, ooh, maybe I can persuade you to come to our side, you know? Like, if I can give you all these chariots and kind of you guys trust us as your allies. Almost trying to make them doubt, like, should they trust their king, Hezekiah? Yeah, and so in the rest of this passage, he just continues to get louder and louder. He keeps taunting them and saying really rude things and even like prophesying like, oh, you're going to have this famine. Like, that's how I'm going to talk about you, as if it already happened.
Right. Like in verse 29, for example, he says, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you out of my hand. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord by saying the Lord will surely deliver us, and this city will not be given into the hand of the kings of Assyria. And this guy is just really, really, really intense at the city gates, yelling and just, intimidating.
Yeah, and making them doubt God. Like, will God really rescue you? Like, he even says that again in verse 32. Once again, for me, definitely whispering, like, is God really going to look out for you in the middle of all that's going on right now? Like, are you sure he's really got your back? Like, just whispering these seeds of doubt almost.
Yeah. So in that situation, right, where for us, it's not necessarily a physical person who's trying to take us, but sometimes it's the coronavirus. Sometimes it's the life situation. Sometimes it's the health. Sometimes it's financial issues or parenting issues, right? Lots of different things that are in our life that are loud, that are in our face, and that are hard to see past.
And that could be mental health issues or lack of motivation. That could be, finding your identity. Like, maybe you're in high school and you're like, I'm trying to find my friends to fit in, or college, or honestly in life, and you're trying to figure out where to fit in and how do I represent God in whatever stage that I'm in. So we just wanted to throw it out there. Like, maybe it's not any of these things. Maybe it's something else that is still loud and hard to ignore and in your face. Maybe it's your Assyria. Right. And so we just want to kind of talk more about what that might be for you.
Yeah, because the Israelites, Assyria was an enemy, and they were an assertive enemy. They obviously were standing outside of the castle walls. They had taken over, I think Sennacherib was responsible for taking over 47 forts and killing 200,000 people, right? And Assyria is known as one of Israel's arch enemies, somebody who, when they show up, it's not a good day, right? So when we say what's your Assyria, we don't necessarily mean the actual physical place, but what's that thing in your life where it's nagging you, it's loud, you're afraid of it, and it's trying to oppress you. And it may be anything from what we just named, from the spiritual side of things to the physical element to anything in between. But the key is, in these times, do you do like me and try to act and make it happen on your own? Or
are you like me, where you're like, I'm just going to fight this battle in my mind and suffer in silence?
Right. What we're going to learn from Hezekiah, which we're going to look at here right now in chapter 19, is that he runs to God. He doesn't just run and do things on his own, and he doesn't just sit still and do nothing. He runs to God. So let's look at that. 2 Kings 19, verses 1 through 4. So Sennacherib has just been doing all this taunting, is what Hope just read. And then in verse 1, as soon as King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth and went into the house of the Lord. So tearing the clothes, covering himself with sackcloth is a way of mourning. It's a way of saying that I'm in distress. And then he goes to the temple. He goes to the one place where he knows God's presence is, which I think is amazing, right? Yeah. And it's such a strong example of running to God, right? And in verse 2, as he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and the senior priests, covered with sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos. They said to him, thus says Hezekiah, This day is a day of distress, of rebuke, and of disgrace. Children have come to the point of birth, and there is no strength to bring them forth. It may be that the Lord your God heard all the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to mock the living God, and will rebuke the words that the Lord your God has heard. Therefore, lift up your prayer for the remnant that is left. So we see two things. We see, one, Hezekiah runs to the temple. He goes where he knows God's presence is. And then he sends someone to go to a very faithful person, Isaiah, and ask him to pray as well. So we see those two things right there. He goes to prayer, and he asks others to go to prayer.
Yeah. So sometimes it can make you wonder, like, okay, where do I run when things get tough, or when there's uncertainty or overwhelm? And it's not bad to go to people. It's good to talk to people. But what do you do when you talk to those people?
Right.
Are you just going to vent, or are you actually going to say, hey, pray with me? Or pray for me? Like, I can't pray right now. I need help. I need backup. Yeah. Which I can almost imagine Hezekiah being like, bring in the reinforcements. I need backup. Right. So it's not bad. But just remembering that people are not the solution. God is, and he's the one who can really be our shield and our refuge in those times.
Absolutely. So in verse 15, we see Hezekiah's prayer. It says, Hezekiah prayed before the Lord and said, O Lord, the God of Israel, enthroned above the cherubim, you are the God. You alone of all the kingdoms of the earth, you have made heaven and earth. Incline your ear, O Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, which he has sent to mock the living God. Truly, O Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste the nations and their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire. For they were not gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they were destroyed. So now, O Lord our God, save us, please, from his hands, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you, O Lord our God, alone. And it's amazing, this prayer, because not only is he running to God and pouring this situation out, right? He is invoking God to act, and it's intense what he's asking God to do, to see, to hear, like pay attention and do something about it. Save us, right? And the point we want to leave you guys with as we study Hezekiah really is where you run can show you who your Lord is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so, just like we were saying, we showed you guys just where it's hard for us, but maybe take some time to think about, like, man, where do I typically run in those times?
Yeah, like me, I basically run to myself, which doesn't make any sense. I tend to think I can do it.
Yeah.
No, I can't. Yeah.
And as I told you guys, it's just like I keep this fight in my mind. So yeah, we can learn from Hezekiah and how he prays, how he runs to God, and how he also asks other people to run with him. He really pours out his heart to God in prayer. And we see that in the scriptures we read, and just how he believes so much in God that he invokes God to do something about the craziness that's going on. There's literally these people outside taunting them and their God. But he's honest with God, but he's also respectful. And I admire that in his prayer life. He doesn't hold back from God out of thinking something's too small or thinking that he's making a big deal out of something. He really is honest about how he feels. But yet he speaks with God of, like, you who are enthroned between the cherubim. You know, he still respects God's holiness and his authority.
And in his prayers, you know, not only is he honest, not only is he respectful, but he's faithful. I mean, I think that's one of the things that sets him apart from other kings of Israel, right? And one of the things that sets him apart from me. You know, I tend to rely on myself, like I said earlier, instead of really laying these things out for God. He took the very letter that he received and spread it out before God and talked to God about it. And as a result, Jerusalem at this point in time was delivered. And it's amazing what his faith in God was able to do. It's amazing what God was able to do. So, yeah, we want to leave you with that and really ask you to imagine. You know, imagine if, as a church, as a Crossway, we go down in history as being people who ran to God first, right? First. And also ask each other to run to God with us.
Yeah. Or imagine if when life gets hard and there's uncertainty, kind of like right now, or there's these things in your life that are super loud or in your face, or you feel like there's no way out, or you're just not sure where to turn. Imagine if we gave all of that to God and kind of said, "Here, God, I'm gonna lay these things before you," the same way that Hezekiah laid out this letter before you.
Yeah, over the past couple of years, I think for Hope and I, it was her grandfather passing. It was my dad having to have a heart surgery. My sister having to have surgery involving what we thought was cancer.
And a heart surgery.
And a heart surgery. Sometimes it's ministry work and just being in the mud with people and having to walk with them through. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the things, right? I mean, sometimes these things are so loud and so in your face and so persistent that it can almost drown out God's truth and make us not want to run to Him. I want to rely on myself. Hope.
I feel heavy. For one.
But just imagine being in a church where, in those moments, good and bad moments, we run to Him. Or even when ministry is great and life is great and things are great and there's success and there's ease and opportunity, still being the people who run to God first, and not forgetting Him because things are so good, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just thinking about that, what could God do? A good friend of mine left me with a quote that I want to leave you guys with, and he said, I don't want to get to heaven and God looks at me and asks me, why didn't you ask for more? Right? Like, whoa. He went on to say that he wants to exhaust God in his prayers. And think about that in your life or in the situations at hand, the things that you're going through that no one may know of right now. Pray like Hezekiah, right? Ask brothers and sisters in the church to pray alongside you, to really, really pray so we can move God.
Yeah. And if you don't have those relationships with brothers and sisters in the church, definitely reach out to us. We're here, and there's people who we'd love to connect you to, no matter where you're at. I know this is live on the internet, so if you're looking for people to get connected to, so you can have those people who are faithful alongside you, we're definitely here.
And those types of relationships start with things like this. Asking someone to pray alongside you or pray for you.
Yeah. That's
the beginning. So. Yeah, we hope this is encouraging for you guys. Hezekiah is a great character, a great man to learn from, regarded by his people as a model of a God-fearing king, and for us today, I think a great example of prayer through adversity.
Yeah. So please share your thoughts through Facebook or YouTube or however you can comment. We definitely would love to hear what helps you overcome when there are times of uncertainty or overwhelm in your life. What are things that have maybe gotten you through those times, or little motivating things that could encourage one another as we all fight. I know Mitchell and I definitely want to know you guys' thoughts for those who are prayer warriors or able to overcome those mental battles too. So please share. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And last thought here, we know there's a side of prayer where God says no. Right, so we'd even love to hear your heart and your faith through those times where He said no, where you've come to the end of your hope and you still had to cling to God. I think that's a whole other conversation we don't have the time to have right now, but that is a part of Christianity and a part of life. Yeah. So we not only would love to hear about that as well, but just to know if you are going through a situation like that, we're not avoiding that topic. We just are trying to focus in on let's being people who run to God. And ask each other to run to God too. So
we love you guys.
Love you guys. Take care.